This is a simple hip hinge. So it's very similar to a Romanian deadlift. Basically is a Romanian deadlift. We're just doing it without any weight at all. And it's a good exercise to try and dial in the mechanics of, because this is a movement that a lot of people mistake throughout their daily lives, and you end up rounding and hunching your back in places where you should actually be doing a hip hinge to keep that spine nice and neutral through the movement. So when we're doing this here, you're going to stand with your feet about hip width apart, feet parallel. That means your middle, like your second and third toes kind of parallel to each other. You can have a slightly turned out as long as your knees are pointing the same direction where your toes are. Knees point the same direction where the toes are. The real key that we're focusing on here is the fact that we're not rounding our spine forward to tilt forward. We're keeping our spine nice and long, as if like your tailbone and the back of your head are a straight line shooting out from each other. I like to think someone tied a string in the back of my head and is lifting me up from there. So from my tailbone to there, I'm keeping a nice long point of form. And then you're just going to tilt right at your hips. So that means your pelvis tilts forward with you. As long as your pelvis is tilting forward, your spine can stay nice and neutral off of that point. And then you'll get down to a point to where you'll feel your hamstrings get tight. When your hamstrings are tight, that's your limit of your range of motion right there. If you want to nudge it, you can. But if you go further, you'll notice with me, if I keep going further, as much as I try, you're going to round the lower back out there. And that's not what we're trying to get into. We're trying to maintain a neutral spine. So you're going to tilt only as far as you get that stretch in your hamstrings, and then you're going to come right back up, squeezing your glute muscles, really clench and engage them to pull the pelvis, the back of the pelvis down to pull the rest of you up. Okay, so again, your pelvis tilts forward. Sometimes I like to think about leading with the small of my back when I'm going forward. Your lower back is kind of leading the charge here, helping to make sure that the pelvis is tilting forward through it, keeping that spine nice and neutral. Engaged in the core here to make sure that the core set of muscles that surround your torso and your spine, keep those engaged to keep that nice and stable. When you get to that point that the hamstrings are tight, squeeze those glutes, pull yourself back up to standing with that nice long neutral spine again. You can put a slight bend in your knees, that's fine. Having that slight bend in your knees will give you a little bit of leeway to how far you can go. The further you bend them, the more you might actually be able to tilt a little bit further, but you're not actually getting any more range in the pelvis with the hips here. You're not getting more range there. You're just kind of letting yourself get lower to the floor, which is a functional movement. If, say, you're going to pick something up off the ground where, for whatever reason, you can't squat and pick it up, which you should be doing, you're going to tilt forward, bend those knees. It gets you a little bit lower. Maybe it's an awkward object that you kind of get around, heavy box to try and pick up from there, and becomes kind of a deadlift motion. So understanding how to do this hip hinge is critical in understanding how to then apply this great motion into these awkward lifts that we might have to do in our life that mimic something like a deadlift. And when you're ready to add in weight, now you're going into a Romanian deadlift. So you're holding weight in front of you here. Sometimes there's variations where you can hold on your back. It's a little bit more advanced, but you just can hold dumbbells straight in front of you, tilting forward, and then coming back up. And that's your standard RDL right there. Or if we're going to do it with no weight at all, you can do this hip hinge. And then this allows you, once you get this hip hinge down, then you can start doing different variations, reaching your arms up and out and different movements here. It also opens up a whole world. If you can get enough range of motion in your hamstrings that allows you to tilt forward enough to get nearly your spine parallel to the floor, then you can get into this great realm of exercises of doing these rows and reverse flies and single arm rotations and twists, all kinds of great stuff while maintaining that good neutral spine hip hinge. Take your time practicing with this. It can take some number of times getting it down. Just kind of nurse it along and make sure you're not going past that point of your hamstrings being super tight.